is Erin, and I was in the military. I was in the Army, so I did get to shoot lots of fun weapons and actually shoot an anti-tank weapon at a tank. And I didn't dissect anyone that I shot or anything crazy. I started medical school afterwards, and through that venture, I have dissected 4 human cadavers. Whenever they asked me for the personal things, I was like, I don't know, all mine are weird. So I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee. This is my first time in Washington, D.C. I'm a senior developer at Beachy. I'd be happy to talk to you guys what it's about, offline. But previously I was a consultant at Reacts, and we made a facility services app using API.ai. It was a chatbot, and you could book meeting rooms, file Salesforce tickets, receive documents from Box, among some of the other features that we have. Now, APIai was acquired by Google in September 2016. Since then, they have been making a lot of changes. And then, about a couple months ago, they rebranded to Dialogflow. So that's what you'll find them under now. So what is a chatbot? A chatbot is basically a program that mimics a conversation, right? Chatbots are absolutely not new to us. We've been interacting with them on our phones for years, trying to get a hold of a representative and get them direct us the right way. Or on your phone and pressing 1 for English or something like that. That is similar. But now that IoT is hot, products like Alexa and Google Home and Microsoft Cortana and Apple Siri, we want to all be having conversations with our devices. So chatbots are back in. This is what I think is the elements of a chatbot. You see up there we have the voice recognition software, which can be capturing the speech and do speech to text. So the simplest example of that would be like on your phone when you dictate like a text and you just talk into it, right? And words spit out on the screen. The next thing that happens is an action has to be determined. From these words, what action do we need to do? It triggers the action, it's either successful or it fails, and a message is made and then given back from text back to speech if you have something that would actually talk. But what I'm going to do today is a Slack bot, so we don't ever actually do this part because it just comes back to text. APIai, or Dialogflow, their main gig is that red star there to determine the action, and they call that intent mapping. With some of the features that they've added now, you can do what the gold stars are, determining the message, triggering the action, seeing if it fails, all those kind of things. So they are making it more robust, and probably eventually all those maybe will be red stars inside of the same program. The top level container for an APIai chatbot is an agent. And this is basically it. You give them a name. I called mine Nodevember. The example I'm going to do is for the conference that I chair, Nodevember. And you can fill in some other things. It'll assign you a project ID, and of course there's always API keys to be entering in the bottom. It comes with pre-built agents. So like I said, that was a top-level agent. This is an example of one for a car. So these are basically things they think a user might say if you were making it some kind of car application. There's nothing magic about it. It doesn't come in and it automatically will check if you have enough gas. You have to program that. They're also releasing a lot of new pre-built agents since Google takeover. They have a lot of integrations. It's literally like this one I did for Slack. I clicked it, it pops open a page, I enter in some keys into APIai, and then I go back to Slack and enter in the keys, and bam, it's in. It's really easy to use. I did a beginners meetup, and in 2 hours I had them making chatbots, and then they went they knew nothing. They had no experience. So the big part of what we're going to do is around the intents. An intent has several sections, has context, user says, events, action and params, response and fulfillment. I have user says and response highlighted because that is the minimum you need to do. It's going to be like the cheerleaders at football and say, I say go fight, you say win, go fight, and then the chatbot says win. Yeah, exactly. So that's as simple as it can get. It can get more complex, obviously. And here we'll just make a simple intent. This is starting from where I was basically on my agent called Nodevember. You just go over to intents and say that one, right? Obviously I have a few in here already. Let's see. We're going to make one that's called conference speakers. You're definitely going to want to have a naming mechanism because once you get about 70 or 80 of these going, you're going to want a way to search them. The context is a way of dealing with follow-up intents, so it's going to help you if you say turn the light on and then later say turn it off. It'll keep that context that we're talking about, the light. And the next section is user says, and that is basically a bunch of expressions that will trigger this intent. So we're just going to pop in a few. And we literally had someone go through with the thesaurus and try to think of all these ways people would ask for something. If you want it to be used, I had my kids put in a few because they, I don't even speak their language anymore. We have an action, which I'm going to explain further. It's basically a string that you make up and you put there. And then you can have some parameters, which we're going to get to real soon. And then, we got our response. I was just going to plug in this URL for it to be the response. So when I say who are the speakers, and it would just send me this link. Or if you put more than one, it will go through the list. So that the first time it hits, it'll do one, and the next two, and the next three, as many as you want. The add message content, you can make more rich messages since I'm integrated with Slack, it'll let me use cards and stuff from Slack if the person is on there. And the fulfillment piece, I'm going to show you guys also. There's 2 different ways to do that now. I knew this wouldn't be so big, and I'm just feels kind of dizzy. The same button. Okay, you see it says agent training started, and it'll save it. Now, inside of APIai, you can go over to here, the try it now, and you can start typing in. I think we're going to go to Slack instead. Now, it's its own separate little guy down here. Kind of like having a chat with Slackbot. You can also tag them into other ones. You can say at APIai, invite him into other channels. To talk to him directly, you have to always say at APIai. So there it is, easy. Who are the conference speakers? And the bot says, gives me the link, right? Now I can click on it and see who all the speakers are. System entities is the next section I wanted to go over. So inside of our intents, we want to be able to have parameters and variables and things like that because we're programmers and we love it. System entities are basically some pre-built, they're tools for creating params out of natural language. So you see here it has sys.geocity. The sys means it's a system entity. And they have geostate US. So, and I can put in my intents a bunch of different ones that have weather report. What's the weather in Nashville, Tennessee? What's the weather in Chattanooga, Tennessee? What's the weather? So, because it knows it's a city and a state, you don't have to go through and put all the city-state combinations. You can just put that, and it'll pick it up better whenever someone says, you know, what is the weather in Houston, Texas? It'll still pick up that pattern. Here in the parameters, I'm making them required by clicking this button. These will be their parameter names. Clickable $signs over there will give us the value. And it even can give you prompts. So if it is required, you might want to follow up if you didn't see the city. Like in the top where I had what's the weather, you wanted to ask, okay, well, in what city and in what state? And we have many entities that are already built into APIai. Let's see. Oh, and I'm using in my response, I don't know the weather in GeoCity, GeoState, right? I'm just using those same variables that they have up there. And so here's examples of some of the ones that they have: an email, an airport, an order number, I guess. They've got several of them in there, and those will make it a lot easier on you. So if I'm asking what's the weather, you see it follows up down there, what city. So I'm going to put a city. Now it's asking for the state. And I'm going to enter in something that is not a U.S. state. And it's going to keep asking me because it is expecting a U.S. state. It will take abbreviations. Okay, and it tells me I don't know the weather in Columbus. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that happened there. If you were going to want to use it in your own application, maybe not just on Slack. Basically what APIai does when asking those questions is it creates a JSON document. We're really interested in this result section. You can see it gave me my action, which is weather.city-state, which is something I totally made up myself. And it gives me the parameters, GeoCity and GeoState, and their values. So no one yell that this is Ruby. When this is just as an endpoint that I'm hitting. All you're doing really is posting that JSON document to an endpoint. In Ruby, it comes through as params. So at the top, I'm grabbing my action and my variables. That's what I care about. And here, I'm going to say, if action is this, then do this. Now, there are going to be some really creative solutions that you're going to have to come up with here, or you're going to end up with a case statement that can be like 70 long that your program has to run to before it finds the right entity. It might be the right time to start doing things like with WebSockets or Elixir or something like that, to be able to have like event listeners always on listening for their action. So basically, I'm hitting the Wonderground API, using the state and city over there. I get my response back, and I grab off of it the weather, and then I just do a nice little string, weather in city-state is weather, right? And you have to return a specific object here. It has to be speech and display text, which is really nice if you're doing something like earlier where I returned the URL. You could just, your speech could be, here's the link, and the display text could be the actual URL, which would provide a lot better experience. We did some confirmation codes with the Salesforce tickets, and you never just want to sit there and listen to that thing go, hey, your confirmation number is. So it was a lot better to display it and have it say something else. So we're going to tie that together here real quick and do our weather, city-states, using the webhook. So I just click webhook. It's going to want to do a webhook now with this intent. I'm going to go to fulfillment. I enable it. I put the little link to my endpoint, and you're going to want to put some more off things in there, obviously, and check for them. So now I can come here and I can say, what is the weather? And it's asking me, what city? Columbus, Ohio. And it accepts the abbreviation. It says the weather in Columbus, Ohio is clear. Now I did try, I wanted to do one really bad with Washington, D.C., but you guys don't have a state. And it doesn't work. Some other features that they have are custom entities. You can create your own custom entities. So I did one like on our Nodevember one that was crew, you know, and so it, you can find out who the crew people were, and I had that set up in an entity. It has Smalltalk. That is not the programming language Smalltalk. That's like telling your, you know, asking it, what's your name, what's your favorite color, and those kind of things. It's telling it good morning, telling it thank you. And those come, you can customize those. There's like a little thing where you can go and you can customize it and you can change the message, but they have a bunch of them in there for default. And it has machine learning, which at this point is basically, it takes any expressions that you do not explicitly have in your intents and asks you to either add them to it or create a new intent with it. Now the ones with the stars is what they've been adding since Google grabbed it, right? So the fulfillment, the inline editor, is similar to doing the webhook, and it supports, it's written in JavaScript. I'm not sure if you can make like HTTP calls from it yet or anything like that. They're kind of pushing you towards using some stuff with Firebase to be able to do that. Is why I still have my regular endpoint there. It has multilingual agent support, some analytics. They're making a V2 beta API and an enterprise edition, which I'm really excited to find out about. Now, limitations. That first time we were doing it on Slack, and it said Columbus, New Mexico. Basically what happened was that timed out because I wasn't really doing any error handling to give you like an error message in my endpoint. But after 5 seconds, it will give you the default message that you had on your response, which can be a problem. We had a real big problem with it creating the Salesforce tickets. They were going through anyway, but it was taking so long that they got the default message, even though it had done the thing you wanted it to do. Separation of intents is a pretty big deal. I mean, just like what's the weather? If you wanted to ask for international weather or weather in a city without a state or something like that, you're really going to have to delineate those. I mean, you would have to require, you couldn't just say what's the weather on each one, you know, like on your one for international weather, you can't say what's the weather. If you have the same expression on multiple intents, it just goes through, and whichever one it finds first, it uses that one. So that is a bit of a challenge. Excuse me. It's quickly changing now that Google has taken over, and it may break your code. It did initially break the app that I wrote. Just had to go back and change a few things, so be wary of that. There is no such thing as versioning. So if you're trying to do like one on staging and one on production, we basically made 2 agents, and they have it where you can pull it all down like a zip file, and then we would just load it up into the production one when it was ready. Backups, like I said, it lets you it lets you make a zip file, and we were just putting those into GitHub and kind of handling versioning and backups that way. So that's the very simple explanation of the APIai chatbot. I wanted to thank Sean Hill, my mentor, for our code assist, Reacts for the opportunity to learn about APIai, Beachy for pretending this is a work day for me, and NationJS for the opportunity to share, and all of you, of course, for attending. Thank you so much.